All right, thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon. We are here to share information on the start and end time changes at Ernest Stapleton Elementary School. I just want to go over a few things before we get started. We have an hour scheduled this afternoon. We're going to start with a short presentation. Then we have a panel of experts to answer some of your questions. Now, a few of you did submit questions prior to our presentation this afternoon, and we have the answers to those questions are included throughout the presentation. So you'll see those answers as we go through this tonight. If you have a question during the presentation, we have opened up the comment section on YouTube. We ask that you type your questions into that section. We're only going to be answering questions this evening that pertain to the topic being presented. If you have another question that's unrelated to this evening's topic, we ask that you email us at communications@rrps.net, and we will get those answers out to you. Also, we ask that you do not use the space for general comments. We want to be sure that we're capturing the questions as they come in. So please know that we're going to remove any comments or questions that do not pertain to the topic, or also if there are any links or inappropriate or disrespectful content, we'll remove that. Again, if you do have a question that's unrelated to tonight's topic, you can email us at communications@rrps.net. So with that, I just want to introduce you to who we have with us this evening. We have our superintendent, Dr. Cleveland. We have Sherry Carver. She is our executive director of student services. We have Noelle Caceres, who is our director of student services. Lynn Carl is our executive director of student transportation. Elise Gibbs is the assistant principal at Ernest Stapleton Elementary School. We have Cheryl Clark, who's the principal at Ernest Stapleton Elementary School. And we have Janice Chenault, who is our elementary school improvement officer. And so with that, I would like to go ahead and turn this over to Ms. Chenault. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. Good evening, Coyote families. Thanks for joining us this evening. As you're aware, we sent out communication letting everybody know that we'd be changing the schedule for Ernest Stapleton Elementary for next school year. This is not a decision that we made easily, but you'll learn tonight why that decision was made and where it came from. As you know, we've had some challenges with transportation this school year, and there are lots of reasons for that. In working with Lynn Carl, the executive director of student transportation, we talked a lot about what changes we could make to try to help with the situations with transportation. Last year, we changed our release time for Wednesdays. We moved that back 15 minutes from 12:45 to 12:30 so that we could accommodate some of those afternoon routes on Wednesdays, and that really helped. So we were brainstorming this year, trying to figure out what we were going to do to alleviate the late routes and some of the issues with transportation. And Lynn and Karen Ramirez, who she works with at transportation, worked really hard to look at different solutions that would help. And they came up with some options. And one of the options was to add an additional elementary school to our morning route. And I will have Lynn explain more of the details because it's a lot about transportation with you. But adding one more elementary school is going to impact several routes in the district. And because of Stapleton's location, that was the reason that we chose Stapleton as the school that would go on the early route. So the first part of that was obviously talking to the leadership team at Stapleton and having Mrs. Clark and Mrs. Gibbs engage with the staff and talk to the staff about why. And when we presented it to the staff overwhelmingly, and I'm sure Cheryl will give you more information on that, they were on board, knowing that the value of having more of our younger students attend school earlier in the morning. So I will turn it over to Lynn Carl to give you more information about transportation.
Thank you, Jenna. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. I know everyone has lots of questions and concerns. And we appreciate everyone being willing to come and talk about what their concerns are tonight so that we can help answer those questions. As you know, as Jenna had mentioned, that transportation has been very challenging for us as well as other school districts across the nation due to shortages in drivers. Part of the reason that we wanted to put Ernest Stapleton on an early bell schedule For one thing, we have some late elementary schools, and when I say late elementaries, they are the ones that where your previous bell schedule was from 9 to 4. Those schools are getting overcrowded. The buses are getting overcrowded. We have too many kiddos on the bus, and we're having to make a double run to get those kiddos home because they've got lots of students that are riding the buses now. Every single bus that we have currently runs a late elementary, so we have no room to add a bus over there to alleviate those overloads. And so by moving Ernest Stapleton to an early bell schedule, that allows us to use those buses for an early school, such as Ernest Stapleton. Then they can also go and do a late elementary. So we have 8 extra buses that we can move around to go to those schools where those buses are overloaded. This also helps us shorten up routes because we will have 8 extra buses that we can use on the late elementaries. So we can add buses to schools and thus make the routes shorter. There's some schools that have really long routes. Fortunately, Ernest Stapleton has very short routes. Your longest route is 20 minutes at the most. So that's great. We have other schools that have 40-minute routes, 35-minute routes. And it makes it very difficult for them to get to their next school. So that helps us adding those buses so we can get those kiddos to school on time. Cheryl, you want to go with this one?
Sure. Okay, thank you, Lynn. So we know that we have 2 schools already on this, stayed with them and looked over what they're doing as we develop our schedule. The main thing to know is we'd be Monday through Friday consistently at the same time. So our student hours would be 7:30 to 1:55 each day. So that means no more early release Wednesdays. And I know that we've had them for a very long time and people have adjusted, but it does give us a consistency that we haven't had before for our instructional week, for families, for everyone. So every day looks the same for students. They would be able to arrive by 7:15. Breakfast would be served just like it is now. And then as we talk about safe, and we'll move with Noelle in a minute, but right now our safe hours are really 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock. It's a really short time period. So one of the things that they do in SAFE is they bring in programs and they bring in guest speakers and different activities. Even though those hours might be longer, it's going to allow for some more creative things to do within that SAFE program as well. So our kids in SAFE will have more time there, time to do more activities and things like that. So those are, and Elise, take it from here.
All right, so I know as we have started planning and thinking about our schedules, where there are some questions around lunches and recesses. Lunch, after talking to the 2 other schools with the same schedule, doesn't look like it'll be all that different for us. We already start lunch around 10:40 each morning, and we rotate our groups through and finish around 1:20, and it looks pretty much the same for this schedule. One of the biggest differences is that when you start at 9 and start lunch at 10:30, you're only an hour and a half into your day. But when we start at 7:30 and have lunch at 10:30, we will be 3 hours in. So it fits a little bit better with how long they've been learning. As far as recesses, the afternoon recesses in some cases will shift to the morning, but there will still be a recess with lunch each day for every class. And that's an additional lunch recess a week, because right now on Wednesdays, they don't all have recess with a short day. I think that's it.
So we come to the slide about the SAFE program. I want to tell everyone about the hours. So it'll be Monday through Friday, 6:45 a.m. to 7:15 a.m. And then they'll go right to class. Then the afternoons will be 1:55 to 6 o'clock p.m., which is the same as Cuesta and Colinas. For a lot of students, currently they do 2 hours in the morning and then 2 hours in the afternoon. A lot of the parents seems like they're not going to need the morning, so they'll have an afternoon at SAFE to spend time with their friends, play outside, those kinds of things. I had a lot of questions about getting parents and students signed up. So there is a sign up wait list. It'll remain open all summer long. And then when we come back in August and July, beginning of August, we'll start putting those parents in that are on the wait list. You'll be notified when to pay. And if you have to change from an afternoon to a morning or a morning to an afternoon, you'll be told then that you can do that. We want to support as many students as possible and continue to provide a safe and supportive environment. So I currently have 70 students enrolled, and we do have a wait list, and there's only 20 students on the wait list right now. So we're looking forward to getting all of those students in. I'm going to be hiring throughout the summer. So let me plug a little bit. We need assistants and we need mentors. So if you know of anybody that wants to have a part-time job next year, the more assistants and mentors, the more students I can get in. I also had a question about rates. Since we already do have 2 schools that do that, we already have rates set up. So as you can see, the before and after is the same price, but as you change the different areas, the price does change from the other schools. It is cheaper still to pay quarterly than weekly, but we do have weekly rates available as well. And everything will be online just as it has been in the past. So I hope this makes it easier for people to understand what SAFE will look like at an early start school.
Okay, one of the questions that was brought up several times, and one that we thought of immediately, was our extracurricular activities that we host here at our school. Those of you involved in those would know a lot of those are music related clubs and so forth. And so we want to continue as many of those as possible. It will change the time for these activities. They're not likely to happen in the morning, which would be way too early. They'll be moved to afternoons. That means some of the days might not be available to do those things. The other thing to remember is each year when we set up these clubs and activities, that is always dependent on staff who have a passion to do so, to help sponsor these clubs. And I'll give you an example. One of our longtime teachers has done guitar club as long as I can remember, and this year did guitaring this year. So those are 2 clubs that may very well not happen next year anyway, because we don't have that sponsor here on staff. And as people come and go on staff and have different interests, we'll always put more things out there that are available. So we absolutely hope that it doesn't have an impact on that. It's really important to us to keep those things. And then, we'll still do our family events. And as the restrictions due to COVID have lessened, we are really looking forward to next year having more of those family events and opportunities to come in. So that won't change. We'll still do all those things that we've always done.
Okay, I talked about part of this a little bit earlier, but as everyone is fully aware, we've had lots of late buses. We short-staffed, just like just about every business there is, but especially school districts throughout the nation. And so due to that, we have doubled and tripled up on routes where they have to make 2 and 3 runs. And as I spoke earlier, having these buses from Stapleton available to help with those doubling up and tripling up, shortening up routes, things like that, that will really help us in getting buses to where they need to be on time. Will be, whether it's because they're doubling or tripling or because the bus is running late because they had to double or triple for another school prior to. And adding, it will be, so currently we run 15 buses for the early elementaries. With adding the Stapleton, that gives us 23 early buses that we can run and help spread out the routes for all of those early schools and make the routes shorter. As I spoke earlier, some of the schools have really long routes. And so if we can shorten those up with those 23 buses, we will add more buses to that early tiering. And in doing that, it also helps the late elementaries as well as the high schools and middle schools have on-time busing. So that is going to be a huge help to have those kiddos going in the morning. We can do better about getting those Stapleton kiddos home on time. It's really unfortunate. It is always the late schools, the late elementary schools that suffer the most when we have a delay in buses. It's the late elementaries, as you guys know, at Stapleton, that always take the brunt of all the lateness that starts earlier in the day. So that will be a big help for all of the kiddos getting home on time.
All right, so some of the benefits we've been looking into to an earlier schedule for kiddos. One of them is the consistent 5-day schedule for our students that struggle with routine changes. This might really benefit them having the same day for 5 days straight as far as routines go. We've looked into a lot of the available information on this schedule, and other schools and districts are commonly reporting that elementary students are performing better early in the day. And this is largely in part to the fact that elementary students kind of lose steam after 2 to 2:30 in the afternoon. So those morning hours are their prime time for learning. And then also the early release will allow families to start weekend and sports activities earlier in the day. I know we have lots of active families in our community who pick up early on certain days to go to a sport or a family activity. And I think this will really help with that as well. So school and activities can happen at the same time. I can talk a little bit more about. So these are some long quotes, but essentially this one is talking about that anything starting later than 8 o'clock in the day means that students are their brains turn off around 2 o'clock, 2:30. And so our optimal time for learning is as early in the day as we can get for our 6 to 12-year-olds. And then this.
Under those challenges, we talked about the traffic with Rio Rancho High School, which I think will be not a huge problem. And then redesigning the weekly schedule, I added that just because internally we will rework our schedule so that our students are still receiving core instruction at the right times. Our intervention blocks will still remain, and they will continue to go to their art, music, PE, library classes. So we're working on that schedule. We want to acknowledge that people have expressed concern about daycare, and that is something we're looking at for both our staff and our families. What are the options? And of course, our first option is our SAFE program. And what our hope would be is that we will make space for SAFE if it gets larger. It's really just dependent on being able to find staff. If we have a bigger need for it. So we do want to support as much as possible there. And then I mentioned extracurricular activities will adjust those times, but they will continue to happen. And then acknowledge that, of course, for families, this is a change. So there will be some adjustments to what time we wake up in the morning and possibly bedtimes and things like that. So we recognize anytime we make big changes, we have to make adjustments. So know that we're aware of that. So.
And Cheryl, I just wanted to add something. I just thought about it and I forgot to add it to the benefits slide. I worked at Colinas del Norte for 9 years on an early schedule. And one thing that we noticed a dramatic drop in was staff absences. They're able to do appointments and things in the afternoon where normally they'll have to take a half day and things like that. So it was really beneficial because staff was able to stay on campus and teach their class for the entire day. So just wanted to add that.
All right, thank you all for your presentation and for the really great information. We are going to get to our questions, and we have just one question actually that came in. And the question has to do, if there was a delayed start, when would families be notified of that? And I can answer that because we send those notices out to everyone at the same time. And generally, our goal is to send all of those before 6 o'clock. So if for example, if it's a snow day or a reason that we have to delay the start that day, we generally try and get those out before 6 o'clock. And those are the only questions that we have for this evening. So again, I want to let everyone know, if you do have questions that come up, please feel free to reach out to your school, and they can help you with those questions. Transportation, you can always email communications@rrps.net, and we're happy to help get those answers for you. So with that, does anyone have any closing comments? All right, great.
I do have a technical question. I know we lost the live stream. Do we have the same number of people back on that were there? I want to make sure we didn't cut anybody off.
Let me see. Yep, it looks like we got folks back on. So
Okay.
Let me do
No,
one more plug for SAFE. So go to the Rio Rancho Public Schools website and you can apply to be assistant or a mentor. You can also email me and I'll answer any questions that you have.
Noelle, can you clarify one thing for me? Our high school students often take some of those positions, don't they?
You have to be 16. So juniors and seniors, or anyone who's 16, they have to apply. We interview them. We have some amazing mentors right now, and a lot of them come back as assistants later on.
Yeah.
EAs can be assistants. Just look at the job responsibilities, look at the qualifications, and put in that application. The more staff, the more kids.
great.
I
Thank
would
you
just-
all.
Yeah. Thank everybody that's here. And if you guys have further questions, send them in.
Great. Have a good evening, everyone. Good night.
Thank you, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.